Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden, my happy place to talk about scary things. On tonight's edition we have bias in the presentation of medical research, featuring Professor Robert Sapolsky, who is here to tell us all about the neurobiology of transsexuality, which was a hot topic in Friday's live stream. It piqued my curiosity, and so I just had to go and do a little bit of research on this over the weekend, and let's just say I was not disappointed.
Ask, okay, well, what about the neurobiology of sexual orientation in women?
And this is us just diving straight into sort of the middle of this presentation of Professor Sapolsky's, and so we're going to get a little taste of his thoughts on homosexuality as well.
Vastly smaller literature, far, far less studied. What has been showed so far are only two endpoints. One is the same deal with the fourth to second finger ratio. On the average, gay women have the ratio more typical of straight men than straight women. The other thing that's been shown is the same autoacoustic reflex thingy going on there.
Okay. I'm not exactly familiar with what he's talking about with the autoacoustic reflex, and I did not go look that up because we're busy around here. I am familiar with the finger ratio thing. Which one do I have, you guys? Because your girl here is bisexual, and apparently Professor Sapolsky doesn't have anything to say about us. I've also heard that that's a myth.
Final realm of neurobiology, rather than issues of gay versus straight, what is the neurobiology of transsexuality? And that used to be considered to be purely a domain of psychopathology.
The edge between mind and matter is still not reliably demonstrated anywhere that I've ever seen. The placebo effect just seems to be getting deeper and deeper the more we look into it. Perhaps you have simply found the neurologic dysfunction generating this psychopathology.
If being gay used to be a certifiable psychiatric disorder up until the early 1970s, the American Psychiatric Association, in their textbook, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, you could be psychiatrically certified as ill. A psychiatric disorder was being homosexual or lesbian.
The difference between being transsexual and being homosexual is that being homosexual does not hurt. Being transsexual is uncomfortable by definition.
And then in what had to have been one of the more all-time blowout committee meetings ever, they decided that, no, actually it's not a psychiatric disorder, and overnight about 40 million Americans were cured of a psychiatric disease. The notion of transsexuality as a psychiatric disorder has had much, much longer shelf life. What's the neurobiology of that? To date, there have been a handful of studies, and they show essentially the same thing. Really, really interesting.
Really, really interesting, is it? This guy's bias is making him assume causation more. Quite frankly, I don't see it.
Another region of the brain that shows a sex difference in its average size. Don't even worry about the name of this. It's called the bed nucleus of the striae terminalis.
And I really don't like the way he tells us not to worry about the names of stuff. I went ahead and did just a little bit of research on the bed nucleus of the striae terminus anyway. The BNST, for short, is thought to serve as a relay center between limbic cognitive centers and nuclei involved in processing of reward, stress, and anxiety. Therefore, the BNST seems to play an important role in the integration of physiological and behavioral responses. So yeah, difference in structure of this brain region might explain some of the behavioral differences we see in transsexuals. That doesn't mean they're in the wrong body, though.
It's where the amygdala begins to send its projection into the hypothalamus. Another one to those gender differences, there's one type of neuron in there with a certain type of neurotransmitter where very, very reliably it is about twice the size in males than in females.
Very reliably, except when it isn't.
Sufficiently so that even in human brains, you could pretty confidently determine the sex of somebody by seeing the number of these neurons. You'll see I'm not even saying the name of the neurotransmitter, it's irrelevant.
I sure wish you'd mention which neurotransmitter it is, because we're looking at excitatory amino acids, monoamines, acetylcholine, neuropeptides, nitric oxide, and the endocannabinoid system, which I understand is pretty complicated. I don't know. I personally would have enjoyed a little more specificity here.
It's just another one of those differences, a dimorphism in a region of the brain, a really, really reliable one. And this was a study done by some superb neuroanatomists looking at transsexuals. And what they showed was very interesting, which was very, very reliably and a very powerful effect what you would see in their large sample size of transsexuals' brains post-mortem was people would have this part of the brain the size not of their sex that they were born with, but rather of the sex they insisted they always actually were.
As I say, you may have located the physiognomy underlying their mistaken conclusion about themselves. That doesn't prove that they're actually in the wrong body, dude. Any more than having a chemical imbalance means that the world is really against you.
Immediate questions one must ask. Okay, well, maybe this is due to the fact that when people change gender, transsexual procedures, there's a whole lot of hormones involved, and maybe that's doing something to this part of the brain. Critical control that they had was this was looking both at transsexuals who had made gender changes and those who went to their deathbed saying, this is not the sex that I am, I got the wrong body, but never made the change.
So this difference in neural structure is organic. So what? If you found a feminine-looking brain in a man's body, that's what you found.
Another control they had, which was looking at men who would get a certain type of testicular cancer where they would have to be treated with certain feminizing hormones. In other words, very similar to some of the endocrine treatments of male to female transgendered individuals.
It's really lovely that they went to all this trouble for this scientific rigor and all, but you're never going to prove anybody's in the wrong body. All you've done is demonstrate why some people might believe that.
And post-mortem, you didn't see the changes there. It has nothing to do with the hormones. It had to do with the person insisting from day one that they got the wrong body.
They got the wrong body. From whom? How? No. What you have there is an outlier. Somebody who maybe needs guidance and understanding instead of surgery.
And this was a landmark study, fabulously well done and controlled and replicated once since then, showing that what transsexualism used to be thought of is that people who think that they're a different gender than they actually are.
Wait a minute. Are we talking sex or gender here?
What this study suggests is what transsexualism is about is people who got the wrong gendered body.
Because one region of their brain is different? I think this is pushing causation in the wrong direction.
These are people who are chromosomally of one sex. In terms of their gonads, they're of that sex. In terms of their hormones, they're of that sex. In terms of their genitalia and their secondary sexual characteristics, they're of that sex. But they're insisting that's not who I really am. This part of the brain agrees with them.
Why is that definitive?
Also, very interestingly, that study was done by the same Dutch scientists who did this one. Again, this is very complex terrain in terms of what these things wind up implicating.
You're right, it is very complex terrain in regards to what these things wind up implicating. Why on earth are you being so glib about this? Why on earth are you insisting on this one interpretation that's physically impossible? You get the body you get. I'm sorry, I'm sure disabled people would love to say that they're in the wrong body too. This is so offensive. But I found some other stuff talking about how classic studies performed in adult rat brains have identified 3 distinct neuron types in this region of the brain. But cross-species comparisons have revealed intriguing differences. Given this tremendous complexity on multiple levels, the comprehensive elucidation of this circuitry and its role in regulating stress and anxiety-related behavior is a major challenge, even as of 2023. So, I don't. This guy's acting like he's so incredibly certain about what this brain region does and what these differences mean, and I'm just not buying it. As part of the extended amygdala, the BNST has become a region of increasing interest regarding its role in numerous human stress-related psychiatric diseases, including post-traumatic stress disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, amongst others. I wonder if it has anything to do with gender dysphoria. They're leaping to conclusions here. Because somebody really wants to support the idea of transgenderism. You don't believe me? Let's go ahead and finish it out.
Interestingly, that study was published right around the time that the city of San Francisco did something very cool, which was for city employees now, medical insurance will cover transgender operations.
Spoken like an ideologue. Spoken like an acolyte. Why is using public funds to operate on confused outliers very cool?
This is a subject with all sorts of realms of implications.
All sorts of realms of implications, all of which point to people being in the wrong body as far as you're concerned, which to me is biased as all hell, because it's physically impossible.
One additional study about transsexualism. Okay, how many of you know about phantom limb syndrome? Okay. You are a guy with a penis, and you get a certain type of penile cancer, and what's often done is your penis is excised, it is cut off, and about 60% of men who've had to have their penises removed because of cancer there wind up getting phantom penile sensations. What you see, though, is when you take transgendered individuals who go from male to female, in other words, as part of it, having their penises removed, 0% rate of penile phantom sensation.
Well, for one thing, from what I understand, those penises are not removed so much as flipped inside out. And I wonder if that has anything to do with it. We're also, once again, disregarding the placebo effect. Exactly how much of phantom limb syndrome is you unconsciously expecting to feel those things? Or anything? I'm not sure that anybody has any idea.
Suggestion being that there is something much more normal in that case than when a penis is being removed for cancer.
Yeah, they did it voluntarily. Isn't that enough?
A whole new area of research, very novel, very challenging. Okay, so this has given us a sense now of this bucket. And we are now ready to move on to what in the environment releases some of these fixed action patterns of sexual behavior, what in the environment is doing this or that to the medial preoptic area or the amygdala or vasopressin receptor levels or any such thing. What are the sensory triggers?
What are the sensory triggers for sexual orientation? Oh my gosh. As of 2 years ago. I love how this guy's acting so certain about this stuff that as far as I know, everybody is still debating to this day. So apparently Robert Sapolsky is on the bleeding edge of neuroscience, and I've never heard of this man. And, you know, I've been dabbling in neuroscience for over 25 years. That doesn't prove anything either, but I think this guy's kind of a hack, because he's clearly got an axe to grind. Who is trans in your life, Professor Sapolsky? And why exactly is brain sex the ultimate litmus test? I'd be fascinated to see what my brain looks like, actually. I think we should, you know, be rolling out tests for this kind of thing. Because if there is a reliable way to tell that somebody is transgender, we could save a whole lot of pain and a whole lot of money. I can't wait. I have been Rad Mom. Thank you so much for joining me out here in the garden for a little exploration of the supposed neuroscience behind transsexualism. Come back at the top of the hour for the live stream, where we always keep it lively, and Wednesday at 11 for a new video. All right, thanks. I'll see you then. Bye.